Five Nights at Freddy's by Goodrich. Getting a job.
Come on, Mike.
Macy told me.
You can't sit on this couch forever.
Yes, I can, I replied without taking my eyes off the TV. She stood in front of the TV to try and block it.
You really think you're gonna make money by watching TV all day?
She asked. I'm sure it's possible somewhere, I said while adjusting my head to look around her.
Well, it's not possible here.
She then shut off the TV and bent down to look at me eye to eye.
Look,
she said in a serious tone.
When you dropped out of high school, I promised Mom I'd make sure you had a successful life.
I know, I told her, not really caring.
And you're not gonna get anywhere in life if you don't try to get a job somewhere.
Mace, you know me. I'm not really a hard-working guy.
I know, but as your big sister, I have to keep you motivated to do your best.
You don't really have to, you know.
I know, but a Schmidt never fails. Mom got really pissed when you dropped out, but maybe you can make it up to her by trying to get your life back together.
I then deeply sighed. I hated working, but I hated disappointing Mom even more. Fine, I said. I'll look through the paper and find out who's offering jobs.
That's the spirit,
she said with a smile. She then went into the bathroom to take her evening shower. I really didn't know what I was thinking when I decided to quit school, but I didn't think it would be like this. I have no money, my parents are upset, and I'm living with my sister in her apartment. I really hit rock bottom. It didn't really help I didn't like physical labor, but I gotta do what I gotta do. So I went over to today's paper. Macy conveniently left it on the kitchen table, and I looked through the want ads. I saw job listings for cashiers, drivers, supply stockers, and all other stuff. None of them were really up my alley. I then threw the paper on the table with frustration. When I did, Macy got out of the bathroom with towels wrapped around her body and hair.
Find anything? She
asked as she took the towel off her hair and started drying it. Nothing I feel like I can do, I said with a groan, to which she sighed in frustration.
There's gotta be something even you can do,
she said as she picked up the paper. She flipped through some things before stopping and appearing to read an ad.
How about this? She
asked as she grabbed a red Sharpie from the table and drew a circle in the paper. She then gave it to me, and I looked at what was circled. The first thing I saw was what looked like a giant teddy bear with a top hat and bow tie, as well as big blue eyes. Next to it read the following. Help wanted. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Family pizzeria looking for security guard to work the night shift. Mondays through Fridays, 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. Monitor cameras, ensure safety of equipment and animatronic characters. Not responsible for injury/dismemberment. $120 a week.
Sounds simple enough for you,
she told me.
Looks like you just gotta watch security cameras.
I was still just staring at the ad in confusion. What's this about dismemberment? I asked, not expecting her to know the answer. She took the paper back from me and read it again.
Maybe it's just a legal thing,
she said with a shrug.
You know, if the worst happened, you know?
I guess, but it's only $120 a week. That's like $4 an hour.
Wow, and here I thought you didn't know how to do math.
Oh, shut up.
Okay, so it's not the best money,
she continued.
But is there any other job you would want to have here?
She got me there. Fine, I told her, taking the paper back. I'll call them and ask about the job.
Thank you,
she said.
And if it helps, don't feel like you have to do this for money. Do it for Mom and Dad, okay?
Okay. She then smiled and went into her bedroom. I groaned and called the number. I didn't want a job, but I didn't have a choice. Though, to be honest, this didn't seem like a difficult job. Interview. Well, needless to say, they were interested in me, despite my educational and work background. I was asked to meet with the boss on Sunday afternoon to discuss some things, like what I'd have to do and stuff. So I agreed. Not like I had a choice. I drove over there and got my first good look at the place. The exterior was big and colorful, with a giant sign reading Freddy Fazbear's Pizza in giant red letters. I went inside and was instantly greeted by tons of little children running around. A good majority of them were by some sort of stage, where I could see 3 animatronic animals singing a cheesy tune. The one in the middle, holding the microphone, was the bear I had seen in the advertisement. To his right was a purple bunny playing a red electric guitar, and to his left was a yellow duck-looking thing playing a keyboard. They all looked really creepy and old, but the kids seemed to love them anyway. I then made my way around the place and found the manager's office. I knocked on the open door, and the manager looked up from his paperwork. "Ah, you must be Mike Schmidt," he said with a smile. "Yes, sir," I replied. "Please, have a seat," he said as he signaled towards the chair in front of his desk, which I proceeded to sit in. "So you want to work the night shift?" he asked. "Yes, sir," I replied. "You said on the phone that you dropped out of high school and have no past work experience, correct?" "Yes, that's correct." I felt stupid talking all professional, but that's how you get the job. "Well, the truth is, you really don't need much to work the security night shift," he explained. "All you really need to know how to do is look at screens and press buttons." "Well, I play video games a lot, so I think I'm good there," I admitted. The manager smiled. "Now," he continued, "if you get this job, your main focus is the animatronic characters on the stage." "Why?" "Well, we don't want anything to happen to them. They're old and almost irreplaceable. We'd fix them, but money's kind of tight for us right now." "Oh." I really didn't know how to reply to that. "Which reminds me," he then proceeded, "if you're unhappy with your payroll, I understand. Of course, perhaps your pay isn't that important to you, or else you wouldn't have called." "You got me there," I said with a chuckle. "I'm mainly here because my sister forced me to. She wants me to make my parents like me again." "I see," he said with a nod. "Well, if you're going to be watching the characters, you may as well get to know them." He then pointed to a picture on the wall of the 3 animals I had seen on stage when I entered. "Right there in the middle is our main attraction, Freddy Fazbear," he said while pointing at the teddy bear. "Right there is Bonnie the bunny, and that's Chica the chicken." "That's a chicken?" I asked in shock. "It looked like a duck." "Yeah, a lot of people think that," the manager said with a chuckle. "Wait, who's that?" I asked while pointing to another picture. The character in there was a red fox or something with an eye patch and a hook on his hand. He also had a big jaw with sharp-looking teeth. "Oh, that's Foxy the pirate," he replied. "He was our main attraction at Pirate Cove, but we haven't used him in years." "Why?" "There was an accident almost 30 years ago involving him," he said nervously. "It's not something we like to talk about." "I see," I said casually. "I wonder what happened." "Well, I think that just about covers it," he finally said with a smile. "Still interested?" I thought for a minute. It seemed like a simple enough job, and it would make my family happy. "I am," I replied. "Well, consider yourself hired." He then extended his hand, which I politely shook. "You start tonight, 12 a.m., he said. "Be here a bit earlier, though, so I can help you get settled." "Sounds good," I replied. Well, I officially had a job now. It actually kind of felt great. Now I just gotta find a way to stay awake all night. Orientation. I arrived at the restaurant at 11:55 p.m. There was only one car in the parking lot, and very few lights on in the building. I walked inside, the door was shockingly unlocked, and found the lights in the main stage area were the only ones on. I could still see the 3 characters on the stage, only they were shut off and not moving. Somehow that made them look creepier. I heard footsteps approaching from the back. It actually frightened me because it was so quiet before then. The manager walked into the room to see who had come in. He smiled when he saw me. "Welcome to your first night," he said with glee. "Excited?" "I guess," I replied. "Better than a no. Follow me and I'll show you to your station." He then started heading to the back of the restaurant, and I had no choice but to follow him. "It's pretty scary here without lights, I know," he admitted. "But don't worry, you have plenty of light in your room." "That's good to hear," I said with relief. He was right when he said it was scary without light. It looked nothing like the happy, joyful place I was in only hours before. Here we are. I saw a small room with 2 doors, one on each side. There was definitely a light in it, though, so that was good. "There's your seat," he said, referring to the black chair in the center of the room. I went into the room and sat down in the chair. It was a little cramped, but at least I had arm and leg room. In front of me was a desk with papers, a phone, a fan, and some food wrappers. There were posters for Freddy Fazbear's Pizza all over the walls, as well as some drawings that looked like they came from children. Next to each of the doors were 2 buttons. There was a white one labeled Light and a red one labeled Door. Finally, in front was a blank screen, which I assumed is where the security feed would come from. "Now there's one important thing I have to tell you," the manager told me through the hallway. "Like I said, we have money problems, so we can't afford to keep the main electricity running all the time. So during your shift, the only power in the building will come from a generator that, if used properly, can last at least 6 hours. "Doesn't sound too bad," I said with a shrug. "Well, the more electrical objects are used," he explained, "the faster the battery will drain." "That makes sense." "Right, but you could end up using a lot of power throughout your shift. For example, the cameras use power, the door lights use power, the doors themselves use power. Heck, you could just sit here and use power from the lights in the room." "Oh." I had no idea how much I would need power. I just hoped it'd be easy to conserve it. "Oh, one more thing," he said. He then pulled out a piece of paper and a pen. "If you could sign this, that would be great." "What is it?" "It's basically a contract saying you'll stay here the whole time during your shift, you won't break anything, steal anything, bring a friend or relative in, legal stuff." "Oh, okay." So I grabbed the pen and signed it. "Well, it's almost time for your shift to start," he said while looking at his watch. "I'm sure everything will be fine. I'll see you in the morning." "All right, see ya." I was actually really nervous, but I couldn't back out now. He then left and I deeply exhaled. I hoped this would go smoothly. I heard a clock chime. I looked up and saw a clock that read 12 a.m. My first night had officially begun. I just hoped it would go by fast. Night 1. I sat in the office. It was eerily quiet. The only real noise was coming from the electric fan on the desk. I turned on the screen in front of me and was greeted with a view of the 3 robotic characters on the stage, only now there was no light anywhere. They looked creepier than they ever have. To the bottom right of the screen was what looked like a layout of the building. It also appeared to be touchscreen. I tapped on one of the other boxes and the screen changed to another room. This one appeared to be backstage, where lots of spare animal costumes could be found. I caught a glimpse of a small screen to the left of the desk. It displayed a giant 99%, as well as 2 green bars. I turned the camera off, and suddenly there was only 1 bar. I realized this must be my power supply reader. Suddenly, the phone on my desk rang, and I nearly jumped out of my seat. After my heart started calming again, I picked up the receiver. "Hello?" I asked.
"Hello?"
The voice on the other end replied. It sounded staticky, but I could tell it was a man.
"Oh hey, you must be the new guy."
"Yeah, that's me," I replied.
"Well, I'm here to get you settled in for your first week,"
He explained.
"I used to work in that office before you. I'm finishing my last week now, as a matter of fact."
"Oh," I replied. I really didn't know what else to say.
"So, I know it can be a bit overwhelming, but I'm here to tell you there's nothing to worry about. You'll be fine. So, let's just focus on getting you through your first night, okay?"
"All right."
Let's see, there's this introductory greeting from the company I'm supposed to read. It's kind of a legal thing, you know?
"Of course."
Okay, welcome to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, a magical place for kids and grown-ups alike, where fantasy and fun come to life. Fazbear Entertainment is not responsible for damage to property or person.
That seemed like normal legal procedure.
Upon discovering that damage or death has occurred, a missing persons report will be filed within 90 days or as soon as the property and premises have been thoroughly cleaned and bleached, carpets replaced, blah blah blah.
That did not seem like normal legal procedure. I thought back to what Macy said, that maybe they're just planning for the worst.
Now that might sound bad, I know,
He continued.
but there's really nothing to worry about.
I kinda wanted to believe him.
Now, the animatronic characters here do tend to get a bit quirky at night.
"Quirky?" I asked.
Yeah, but do I blame them? No. If I were forced to sing those same stupid songs for 20 years and I never got a bath, I'd probably get a bit irritable at night too.
I guess he had a point.
So remember, these characters hold a special place in the hearts of children, so we need to show them some respect, okay?
Okay,
So just be aware,
he then said in a serious tone.
these characters do tend to wander a bit.
Wander? I felt like a broken record.
Yeah, they're left in some sort of free roaming mode at night. Something about their servos being locked up if they're left off for too long.
Well, why don't they just do that in the daytime?
Well, they used to be able to walk around in the day,
He explained.
but then there was the bite of 87.
I froze in fear. I could then hear him chuckle to himself.
It's amazing that the human body can live without the frontal lobe.
I heard him say quietly. I then thought of what the manager said earlier, about an accident occurring almost 30 years ago. Just what the hell is up with this place?
Now, concerning your safety,
He continued in a normal tone.
the only real risk to you as a night watchman, if any, is the fact that these characters, if they happen to see you after hours, probably won't recognize you as a person.
What? I asked. What will they recognize me as?
They'll most likely see you as a metal endoskeleton without its costume on.
That's a bit strange.
Now, since that's against the rules here at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, they'll probably try to forcefully stuff you inside a Freddy Fazbear suit.
That didn't seem too bad,
Which wouldn't be so bad
he said as if reading my mind.
if the suits themselves weren't filled with cross beams, wiring, and animatronic devices, especially around the facial area.
I suddenly cringed at the thought of that.
So yeah, you can probably imagine how having your face shoved in there would cause a lot of discomfort and death.
I felt like I was about to puke.
The only parts of you that would most likely see the light of day again would be your eyes and teeth poking out the front of the mask.
I could feel myself getting pale. I didn't make a single noise.
Yeah, they don't tell you these things when you sign up.
He replied to my silence. No, they don't, I replied.
But hey, first night should be a breeze. I'll chat with you tomorrow.
Okay. I was really scared.
Remember, check those cameras and close the doors only if absolutely necessary. Gotta conserve power.
I looked at my power meter, which was at 98% now. Got it, I told him.
Alright, good night.
I then heard him hang up. I then put the receiver back and deeply exhaled as I grabbed my hair. My heart was racing fast. I had no idea what this job was like. Just out of curiosity, I turned the camera back on and turned to the stage. All three of them were still there. I sighed a deep sigh of relief. I then turned the camera back off. I then just chuckled. He's just messing with me, I told myself. He just wants to screw with the new guy. They won't move, and they certainly won't try to put me in a suit. I'll be fine. I then pulled out my iPod and started listening to some music while reading a magazine I had brought with me. After a while, I glanced at the clock. 12:45 a.m. I then opened the screen again. They were all still there. I smiled and put the screen back down. I then let out a big yawn. I tried taking a nap earlier today, but I don't think it did much help. I figured another nap now wouldn't hurt. I then closed my eyes and I could feel myself passing out. I woke up to the sound of clanking. I opened my eyes and looked at the clock. 3:30 a.m. I pulled up the screen and my heart dropped. I saw a brown bear and a yellow chicken, but not a purple bunny. Bonnie was gone. I clicked around, and when I got to the dining room area, I saw him standing by the tables. I asked myself how he got there, but then I realized maybe the guy on the phone was right. Maybe they do move. Anyway, I put the camera down to not waste any power, which I saw was at 73%. Calm down, Mike, I thought to myself. It'll be okay. He's just standing there. He's not gonna get you. I then peeked back at the screen. He was still there, and the others were still in their spots. I felt myself taking short breaths out of fear. I put the camera down and tried to relax. I'm sure even if those things found me, they wouldn't try to put me in one of those suits. That's just crazy. I then heard footsteps in the hall. I quickly pulled the screen back up and saw Bonnie wasn't there. I went back to the stage and saw Freddy was the only one there. My heart started pounding again. I quickly clicked through the screens and saw Bonnie was in the supply closet, again just standing there. I then flicked through and found Chica by the restrooms, standing there with mouth wide open. After putting the camera down again, I looked at the clock. 4:33 a.m. Somehow time was passing fast. After hearing footsteps again, I turned the camera back on to reveal Bonnie was back in the dining room and Chica in the kitchen. The kitchen camera was set to audio only for whatever reason, but I heard things moving around in there. Freddy was still on stage, though. All the while, I could see my battery being used up. At 5 a.m., it was at 44%. The manager said if used right, this thing could last 6 hours. I hope that was true. The characters didn't seem to be that much of a threat, to be honest. They were just moving around the building, nowhere near me, and it was only 2 of them. I actually felt confident. Finally, I heard chiming above me. I looked up and saw the clock read 6 a.m. I sighed a deep sigh of relief. I looked at the cameras for the heck of it and noticed Bonnie and Chica were moving back towards the stage. When they got back on, they got back into their positions and froze. I then pulled the screen down and got up from my chair. My first night at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza had come to an end, and I had quite an earful for the manager. Confrontation. I heard the front door open a few minutes after 6. I got out of my boxed room and went over to the front, where I found the manager walking in. He smiled when he saw me. I, however, didn't return the smile. "Thanks for watching the place," he said. "And thanks for telling me those robots move at night," I told him as I pointed at them on the stage. His smile disappeared. He then sighed. "If I would have told you that when you signed up, you would have never taken the job," he replied. "You're right," I replied, "but a heads up would have been considerate." "I'm sorry, but I had to do what I had to do." "Well, I have to do what I have to do," I replied coldly. "I quit." "You can't do that." "Watch me." "No, Mr. Schmidt, you seriously cannot do that." "Why?" He then pulled what looked like my contract out of his pocket, as if he knew he would need it. "Look right here," he said, pointing at the paper. I took a glance at where he was pointing, and my heart dropped. It clearly read, "As a worker, I will not quit or leave job while employed at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza." "You son of a bitch!" "I'm truly sorry, but it's the only way to keep my workers employed." "What if I don't come to work, huh?" "Ahem. As a worker, if I don't work any of my shifts, I understand I will be sued by Fazbear Entertainment for everything I own." "That's just ridiculous!" "I'm very, very sorry, Mr. Schmidt." I deeply sighed and stormed out of the restaurant. "Don't forget," he called out, "your shift starts again tonight at midnight." I was kind enough to flip him off as I got into my car and drove away. Night 2. I arrived to work at 11:50 p.m. God forbid I be late and get sued. The manager was in the front area again, only this time he didn't greet me with a smile. In fact, he didn't say anything. He just gave a quick nod and left. This was going to be one awkward career with him. I then went into my office and waited until my shift officially started. Let me tell you, it was the longest 10 minutes of my life. This whole day wasn't very fun. I started sleeping as soon as I got home, and I didn't wake up until 3 in the afternoon. Macy asked how the job was. I just shrugged and said it was fine. If I would have told her the truth, she would have never believed me. Then the clock rang 12, and I deeply exhaled as I prepared for my second night. A minute later, the phone rang. I was sort of expecting it this time, so I wasn't as surprised. The loud noise after a bit of silence will still cause a scare, though. I then picked up the phone. "Hello?"
Hello?
It was the same guy from last night.
Well, hey, you made it tonight too. Congrats.
"Thanks."
Now, I won't talk quite as long this time, seeing as how Freddy and his friends become more active as the week progresses.
He explained.
It might be a good idea to look at those cameras while I talk to make sure everyone's in their proper place.
With that, I quickly looked at the camera and sighed with relief. "They're still on stage," I told him.
Good.
He told me.
You know, interestingly enough, Freddy doesn't come off the stage very often.
"Really? That would help a lot. One less robot I have to deal with."
Yeah, but I heard he becomes a lot more active in the dark, though. But hey, I guess that's one more reason to not run out of power, right?
Right, I replied with a nervous laugh.
Oh, I also want to emphasize the importance of using your door lights.
He continued. Good, because I was wondering what those were for. I then pressed the white button and the hallway outside my door lit up.
You see, there are blind spots in your camera view,
He explained.
and those blind spots happen to be right outside your doors.
At least those were the only blind spots.
So, if you can't see something, or someone, on your camera, be sure to check your door lights. You might only have a few seconds to react. Not that you'd be in any danger, of course. I'm not implying that.
Of course not. I'm not sure how unintentionally sarcastic that came out.
Also, check on the curtain in Pirate Cove from time to time.
Why? I then turned the camera on, only to discover Bonnie was off the stage. After finding him in the dining area, I switched to the Pirate Cove camera, where I just found a closed curtain with a "Sorry, out of order" sign in front.
The character in there seems to be unique in that it becomes more active when the cameras are turned off for a long period of time,
He explained.
I guess he just doesn't like to be watched. I don't know.
I put the camera down and thought about what he just said. The manager said the character in Pirate Cove hadn't been used in years. Why would he still be able to roam?
Anyway, I'm sure you have everything under control.
He finished.
Talk to you soon.
Alright, I told him. Later. He then hung up, as did I. I looked back at the camera and saw Bonnie was still in the dining area and everyone else was still on stage. I then flipped to Pirate Cove and saw the curtain was still closed. This was definitely going to be an interesting shift. An hour passed, and not much really happened. Bonnie kept moving from place to place, but thankfully he wasn't in a blind spot. I kept checking in on Pirate Cove and still found the curtains shut. I don't think he was going to be a real problem. I looked back at the stage and found Chica had moved as well. I managed to find her by the restrooms, staring creepily. I put the camera down and started feeling nervous. Both of them were moving now, but hey, at least Freddy hadn't moved. Although I checked the cameras after thinking that just to make sure. Another hour passed. It was 2 a.m. now, and not much changed. Bonnie and Chica were moving around, Freddy was still on stage, and nothing was different at Pirate Cove. Best of all, my power was at 69%, which I felt was pretty good progress. It may have gotten a bit too easy, as I felt myself slowly falling asleep. I woke up to rattling outside my left door. I quickly looked at the clock and saw it was 2:30. I flipped through the camera and checked the areas outside my left door, but I couldn't see anything. My heart started beating fast. There was one more possibility. I quickly pressed the white button on my left and the hallway illuminated. Instead of an empty wall, though, I was greeted by a giant purple face right in front of mine. I shrieked in fear as I pressed the red button above the white one and saw a giant metal door slam down. I clutched my chest and tried to take slow, steady breaths. That thing could have easily gotten in here. I then quickly pulled the camera up and saw Chica was still in her hallway and Freddy was on stage still. After noticing my power was going down rapidly, I realized I couldn't keep the door shut forever. I turned on the light outside the hallway and saw a shadow outside the window, meaning Bonnie was still there. Maybe I did have to leave the door shut all night. I looked back at the cameras and saw Chica was coming closer to my door. Freddy was still on stage though. I turned the light back on and saw the shadow was gone. I opened the door and saw Bonnie was no longer there. I deeply exhaled with relief and looked back at the cameras. I then checked Pirate Cove and saw what looked like a fox head poking out of the curtain. He looked right at the camera with a wide opened mouth and sharp teeth. I still don't understand why Foxy was able to roam, but that wasn't important right now. I kept flipping through the cameras and found Bonnie and Chica still in the hallways and Freddy still in place. I looked back at the curtain and saw Foxy was looking at the camera still. He looked pretty tore up, but that's what happens when you're abandoned for 30 years. I put the camera down to save power and tried to calm myself. It was 3 a.m. now and my power was at 52%. If I kept this rate, I'd barely make it to 6 a.m. I checked again to see where everyone was. Bonnie was in the supply closet, Freddy hadn't moved off stage, and Foxy was still peeking out the curtain. However, I couldn't find Chica. I had last seen her in the right hallway. I turned on the right hallway light and was greeted by a yellow chicken pressed against the window. I quickly shut the door and turned the light off. After a few seconds, I turned the light back on and saw she was still there. Groaning, I turned on the cameras to find everyone else. They were in their same places, but something was different about Foxy. He was even further out of the curtain. I really need to keep my eye on him. I turned the light on and saw Chica was gone. I then opened the door and checked both door lights just to be sure. Nothing on either of them. Soon it was 5 a.m. Nothing else exciting really happened, save for a few times Bonnie and Chica appeared outside my doors. The power was at 31%, so I felt safe. I then decided to check Pirate Cove again. When I did though, I discovered the entire curtain was wide open and Foxy was nowhere in sight, and the out of order sign now read, "It's me." I then quickly flipped through all my cameras to find him, only to discover he was dashing down the hallway towards my left door. I quickly slammed the door shut when I saw him. A split second later I heard banging, then nothing. I turned on the light to make sure he was gone and pulled the door back up. I then checked the camera and found the curtain at Pirate Cove closed again. I assume that's where Foxy was now. After that, everything went smoothly. There was no more hiding in blind spots, and there was no more Foxy attacks. I gave a small chuckle of joy when I heard the clock ring 6 a.m. I then looked and saw everyone head back to their proper place. With that, it was just a simple wait until the manager showed up. I was really starting to wonder if I could handle this job any longer than a week. Research.
What you doing?
Macy asked as she looked over my shoulder. Just doing research on Freddy Fazbear's, I replied, not taking my eyes off the computer screen.
Why?
I don't know. Something just doesn't feel right about the place.
What do you mean?
I don't know. I didn't want to lie to her, but I know how ridiculous this whole thing sounded.
Alrighty then.
She then walked away to make our dinner. I honestly didn't know what I'd find with my research, but I knew I had to do something that would help me or explain something. After a quick Google search of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, I quickly came across a shocking fact. The place was not very popular. It had gotten poor reviews over the years, and customers have not been happy with the quality. The most recent complaint was the report of a mother who found what appeared to be blood and mucus-like substance around the eyeballs of one of the animatronic characters. If I didn't know better, I'd be concerned. Of course, I still was.
Dinner's ready,
Macy called out. I then closed the screen and went into the dining room.
You okay?
She asked as I took a bite of my pizza. Yeah, why? I replied as I swallowed.
I don't know. Ever since you started working, you've been acting different.
I'm still adjusting to my new sleep schedule, I explained.
I know. I hope that's the only reason why.
I wanted so badly to tell her it's not the only reason, that I hated my job, and I wanted out of it so bad, that every night was a risk of dying. It is, I replied and kept eating. There wasn't much conversation after that. Night 3. As I sat in the office to wait for my third night to start, I realized I wasn't as nervous this time. I realized I knew what was coming. I realized I had nothing to worry about. When I first arrived, the manager gave another quick nod and left. He must be really scared to say anything to me, not that I blame him. I may have been a little rough on him, but what he did wasn't fair. The clock rung 12. I deeply breathed. I'd be fine. I knew I'd be. The phone rang again. It was to be expected at this point. I picked it up. Hey, I spoke into the receiver.
Hello?
The phone guy replied.
Hey, you're doing great. Most people don't last this long.
I froze with fear.
I mean, you know, they usually move on to other things by now.
He quickly corrected.
I'm not implying that they died. That's not what I meant.
Of course not, I replied confidently, but then thought of that stupid contract and how there was no way they could move on to other things.
Anyway, I better not take up too much of your time,
He continued.
Things start getting real tonight.
What the hell was that supposed to mean?
Hey, listen, I had an idea.
He then said.
If you happen to get caught and want to avoid being stuck into a Freddy suit, try playing dead. You know, go limp.
I was really confused as to what that meant, but he kept on explaining.
Then there's a chance that maybe they'll think you're an empty costume instead.
I had to admit, that was strange, but it seemed smart.
Then again, if they think you're an empty costume, they may want to stuff a metal skeleton into you.
He suddenly told me.
I wonder how that would work.
I was then freaked out at the thought. There were two possible ways of putting an endoskeleton into me, and neither would feel pretty.
Yeah, never mind, scratch that. It's best just not to get caught.
He concluded. I appreciate this guy's attempt to make me feel better, but he's not doing a good job at it.
Okay, I'll leave you to it.
He finished.
See you on the flip side.
Before I could reply, he hung up. I somehow felt more nervous. What did he mean when he said things would get real tonight? But I had no time to figure it out. I looked at the stage via the camera and saw Bonnie was already off. After finding him backstage, I checked on Pirate Cove and found the curtains closed. So far, everything seemed to be alright. Time seemed to pass very quickly as I kept flipping through the cameras, keeping an eye on everyone. Bonnie and Chica were both moving now. Foxy's head was sticking out of the curtain, and Freddy was suddenly staring at me on stage. It was the first time Freddy showed signs of moving since I started working. By the time it was 3 a.m., my power had dropped to 48%. As long as I used as little power as possible, I'd be fine. I kept checking my blind spots often to make sure nobody was near me and ready to kill me. I didn't fully believe they'd do much harm to me, but I couldn't risk it. Finally, at 4 a.m., I checked Pirate Cove and discovered the curtain was wide open and Foxy was gone again. I immediately shut the left door and pulled up my screen. I checked the hallway outside and found Foxy sprinting down the hall again. When he got outside my door, he banged on it a few times before stopping and leaving. I deeply exhaled as I opened the door again. Suddenly, I heard a deep and creepy laugh echo throughout the building. I then pulled up my screen and my heart started pounding. Freddy wasn't on the stage. I checked the dining area and at first didn't see anything, but a close look at the screen showed 2 small white lights in a dark corner of the room. I then remembered the phone guy telling me Freddy becomes more active in the dark. I kept watching where everyone was. Foxy was still behind the curtain, Bonnie was in the supply closet, Chica was in the right hallway, and Freddy was in the dining area. Soon it was 5 a.m. Freddy was still in the dining area, Foxy was barely peeking out of the curtain, and Bonnie and Chica were still wandering around. Occasionally I had to shut the doors, but my power was alright. However, I took a glance at my remaining power and saw it was 14%. I wasn't sure if I'd have enough to make it. Suddenly I heard the deep, spooky laugh again. I opened the screen and saw Freddy was no longer in the dining area. I flipped through and found him in the restrooms with, again, white lights in the dark area indicating his presence. Soon I looked at my power supply. It was at 3%, and it was 556. A miracle from God himself would let me make it. I checked the screens again and saw everyone hadn't moved, which was good. Finally, my power was at 1%. It was 559. I felt confident yet scared. I decided to stop using the camera and the lights. It was risky, but it was worth it. Suddenly, the clock rang 6. I opened the camera with the last of my shift's power and saw everyone go back to their place. I then realized if nothing else changed at this point, I think I would be okay. I still felt like there was something about this place that was a bit off. I need to do more research about the place to find out more. Night Shift 101. When the manager showed up, I left without saying a word, as did he. As I left and headed for my car, though, I heard someone give a quick whistle for attention. I looked around and saw what looked like a homeless man in the alleyway a few buildings over. "Hey, you!" he called out. "You that new security guard over at their pizza place?" Yes, I replied slowly. "Come here," he called out to me. "I can help you." Did he somehow know what happens at this place? I'm actually kinda tired, I told him. It wasn't a lie. "Do you want to die tomorrow?" No. "Then get over here so I can help you." I paused before sighing and jogging towards him. If I was going to potentially die, I'd rather it be from a hobo than a robot. "Listen," he said quietly when I got to him. "Your next shift will be your 4th night, right?" "Yeah," I replied. "And has that evil bear started moving yet?" "Yeah." "Let me tell you, he's a sneaky one. You'll never see him get in your room until it's too late." "What do you mean?" "I mean you gotta keep your eyes on him at all times. When you're looking at your cameras and don't see him, he's already in there with you." I'm sorry, but how do you know this?" "I used to work in that goddamn place," he replied. "But how did you quit?" "Quit?" He then burst into laughter. "Boy, I didn't quit. I couldn't." "So what happened?" "I didn't show up for work, that's what." "So that means you got sued for everything I own?" "Yes, I did. And that's why I am how I am now." "I'm so sorry." "Hey, it was the best moment of my life. After that, I got fired and was free from that hellhole." So why are you here? To warn guards to come about how to survive that job. Well, if all you have to do is watch for Freddy. He then started laughing again. You think that's all? You also gotta watch for the bunny and the ducky thing. Why? Those bastards can break your wiring. If you don't lock them out in time, they'll stop your lights and door from working. Then they'll get you when you check your camera. How do you know? I've seen it happen to innocent fools who don't know better. So what do I do if that happens? The only thing you can do is close the other door and sit there. No using the camera or any electronic of the sort. You gotta conserve what power you have left. That's risky, but it's the only way. I was wondering how serious this guy was. Maybe the job made him too crazy. Well, thanks for the advice. Remember what I said, he said sternly. I will, I replied. I then headed towards my car. Remember, watch the bear and keep that bunny and duck from breaking your wires. Got it. I then got in my car and pulled away. I began thinking of what he said. I had a feeling I really wasn't going to like my fourth night. Macy's research.
Mike, can I talk to you for a second?
Sure, I guess. I then muted the TV.
You know how you said something about that pizza place you work at didn't feel right?
Yeah?
Well, while you were sleeping this morning, I did my own research on the place.
Did you find something?
Unfortunately, yes.
Unfortunately. She then handed me some pieces of paper to read. I took a quick glance at them and saw they looked like newspaper articles. The first one read, Kids vanish at local pizzeria. Bodies not found. That immediately got my attention. I kept on reading. 2 local children were reportedly lured into a back room during the late hours of operation at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza on the night of June 26th. While video surveillance identified the man responsible and led to his capture the following morning, the children themselves were never found and are presumed dead. Police think that the suspect dressed as a mascot to earn the children's trust. Holy shit, I said quietly.
It gets worse.
She explained.
Read the next one.
So I pulled the next article out and read it. 5 children now reported missing. Suspect convicted. 5 children are now linked to the incident at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, where a man dressed as a cartoon mascot lured them into a back room. While the suspect has been charged, the bodies themselves were never found. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza has been fighting an uphill battle ever since to convince families to return to the pizzeria. That's strange. When I went for the interview, everything seemed fine. There were kids all over the place, happy as could be.
Keep going,
she commanded. She was really starting to look nervous. I looked at the last article she gave me. Local pizzeria threatened with shutdown over sanitation. Local pizzeria Freddy Fazbear's Pizza has been threatened again with shutdown by the health department over reports of foul odor coming from much-loved animal mascots. Police were contacted when parents reportedly noticed what appeared to be blood and mucus around the eyes and mouths of the mascots. One parent likened them with reanimated carcasses. I read about this one a bit last night, I replied.
Mike, what the fuck is going on here?
I deeply sighed. I could tell how worried she was by all this, so I told her everything. I told her about Phone Guy's messages. I told her about my contract that prevents me from leaving. I told her about the hobo's advice. I told her about the possibility of dying by being shoved into a costume. By the time I was done, she looked sickly pale.
Why didn't you tell me this before?
She finally asked. Would you have believed me? She replied with silence. If I would have told you that on my first night, you would have said I was overreacting and I was trying to get out of work. More silence. She looked like she was about to tear up.
Can't you just call the police or something?
She asked after a while. I shook my head. I caught a glimpse of the contract. It read, If at any time I call the police while employed at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, I understand I will be sued for everything I own.
That's just stupid,
Macy said with a red face. I shrugged. There's not much I can do, I replied.
Well, all I can say is, go to work tonight and try to survive. Take the homeless guy's advice and keep an eye on everyone. I'll try and do some more research, maybe find a way around your contract.
You would do that?
Of course, Mike. You're my brother. I gotta make sure you're okay at all times.
Thanks, Macy. Really. She then smiled and looked at her watch. The smile faded.
It's about time for you to leave,
she told me. I gave a quick nod and got ready. Before I left, she gave me a tight hug and started crying.
It's all my fault.
She whispered.
I had to make you take this stupid job.
It's okay, I replied while patting her on the back. There's no way you could have known.
I know.
I'll be fine, I told her confidently. Honest.
Okay.
With that, I said goodbye and left for work. I was starting to wonder what happened to those kids that went missing. When I got in my car, though, a thought hit me. What if they're inside the animatronic suits? It would make sense. That's why the bodies were never found, and it's why the characters smelled and had blood and mucus around the eyes and the mouth. But there were only 4 characters and 5 kids. Where did the 5th one go? As I backed up the car, I asked myself if I could keep my promise to Macy. Night 4. I couldn't stop thinking about the articles Macy showed me. If I was correct, and the children were in the suits, it would explain so much. Of course, it raised the possibility of a haunting. I was never one to believe in ghosts or the supernatural, but after this whole job, I realized anything is possible. It may be possible that those kids are possessing the costumes, which is why they move around. I know the phone guy claimed there was a free roaming mode, but I began wondering if that was the whole reason they walked around. Before I could reflect on it more, the clock rang 12. I pulled up the camera and found everyone in their place. When the phone rang, I didn't flinch at all. I just picked it up with confidence. Hello? I asked.
Hello?
It was him again.
Hey, wow, day 4. I knew you could do it.
He seemed nervous.
Hey, listen, I may not be around to send a message tomorrow.
I could suddenly hear banging in the background.
It's been a bad night here for me. I'm kinda glad I recorded this message for you when I did.
I had a terrible feeling this wasn't going to end well. Wait, this was a recording?
Hey, do me a favor.
He continued as the banging increased.
Maybe sometime you could check inside one of those suits in the back room. I'm gonna try and hold out until someone checks. Maybe it won't be so bad.
The banging wouldn't stop.
I always wondered what was in those empty heads back there.
I then suddenly heard what sounded like a music box playing a song that sounded very creepy.
You know,
There was then what sounded like a low-pitched moaning, similar to what I've heard Bonnie and Chica make.
oh no.
There was then suddenly a low-pitched screaming echo through the phone, and the phone disconnected. I sat in fear. I wanted to believe he was okay, but somehow I knew that wasn't very likely. I then opened the screen to reveal Bonnie and Chica were gone. After finding them in the cameras, I checked Pirate Cove, only to discover Foxy was already sticking out of the curtain. This was going to be a fun shift. For the first hour, I managed to find Bonnie and Chica scattered all over the place, but thankfully they weren't in a blind spot. Foxy was still teasing me by sticking out of the curtain. Freddy, however, remained on stage. I began to feel confident now. I felt like there was nothing to worry about. I checked the light outside my doors. The right one was clear. The left one, however, was filled with a purple bunny. I then slammed the door shut and checked the cameras again. Chica was by the restrooms, Foxy was sticking out of the curtain, and Freddy... Oh shit, I couldn't find Freddy. I then heard that same evil, low-pitched laugh echo through the building again. I checked to see if Bonnie was outside the door. Thankfully he wasn't. I opened the door and looked at the camera. In the dining area, I could see 2 glooming eyes in the dark again. The homeless guy said if I just kept my eye on him, I'd be fine. I checked Pirate Cove again and found the curtain wide open. I quickly shut the left door. A second later, there was banging. I froze. That sounded like the banging I heard in the phone call. Anyway, I checked the light and saw nobody was in the hall. I opened the door with relief. I suddenly heard that evil laugh again. I opened the camera and tried to find Freddy. I didn't see any glowing lights anywhere, but when I checked the kitchen, despite it being audio only, I heard a familiar music box playing a familiar song. It was a song I heard in the phone call. I could only assume Freddy was in the kitchen. I managed to find everyone else, so I felt safe for now. I then flipped through the cameras, and in one hallway, I found something I hadn't seen before. A poster of what looked like Freddy, but he seemed to be golden. I was confused, but I shrugged and put the screen down. When I did, I saw what appeared to be the same Freddy I just saw on the poster sitting right in front of me. It was golden, limping lifelessly, and had no eyes or teeth at all. Screaming, I pulled the screen back up to protect myself from it. I then flipped through the cameras again to find everyone. Surprisingly, I was doing it to calm myself down. When I found them all in the same places, I dared myself to put the camera down. I was relieved when I saw that the golden Freddy was gone. I wondered if it was really there, or if I was just imagining it. Anyway, I soon looked at my clock. 5:55 a.m. I could make this. I could. I then looked at my power, and my heart dropped. 1%. There was no way I would make it. Without power, I'd have no way to protect myself. Suddenly, the lights in the room shut off, and the screen stopped working, and a loud humming went low-pitched as the power went out. I was now sitting in total darkness and silence. I sat completely still in my seat. Maybe I could still make it. I only had to wait 5 minutes. For the next 4 minutes, I sat in complete silence. I didn't move at all. I made no noises. I could hear the characters moving around, which made my heart beat a bit faster. Suddenly, I heard that music box song playing, only it sounded really close. I felt sweat roll down my face. I remembered my promise to Macy, that I would be okay tonight. I felt terrible that I couldn't keep that promise. Suddenly, the music stopped. I could hear footsteps slowly approaching. I held my breath. This was it. I was gonna die. Then I heard it. The clock. It was battery operated. It rang 6 a.m. I heard the footsteps quickly walk away from the room, and I deeply breathed. I barely survived my 4th night. I was terrified of what tomorrow would bring, and if I could survive it. Discovery. I knew I had a few minutes before the manager would show up, so I decided to do something real quick. I snuck out of the office and ran towards the back room, where all the animal costumes were. I see the live feed of this room every night, but I've never seen it in person. It looked the same, but I felt very uneasy. One reason for that was the terrible smell. I felt like I was gonna gag as I walked in. It was just so foul-smelling. I then looked at the corner with the security camera. I saw something I hadn't seen in the feed, a Freddy suit that appeared to be a spare. It was slouched over and lifeless and had no signs of a metal endoskeleton. I also managed to figure out that this was the source of the foul smell. I wondered what was going on with it, but I knew the phone guy wanted me to see this. I realized this had to be for one of 2 reasons. Either one involved something horrible inside of it. I then heard the front door open up.
Mr. Schmidt?
The manager called out.
Where are you?
In the back room, I replied. I could hear total silence.
Why?
He finally asked. I smelled something in here, I told him. I wanted to see what it was.
So you left the office during your shift?
No, I just got in here, I promise. Check the cameras for yourself. He then poked his head in the doorway. I'll be sure to, he promised. Oh, and you might want to wash these suits, I told him, playing dumb. They smell like someone died in them. He just stared at me blankly. Of course, he finally said. I'll make sure it's done. With that, I walked out and left work. I needed all the rest I could manage for tonight. Confusing truth.
Mike, you aren't gonna believe this.
Macy exclaimed as I walked in the door. She had rings around her eyes. How late did she stay up? Did she even sleep? What is it? I asked. She gave me another printout of a newspaper article. I took a glance at it.
It was printed a month after the last one I showed you,
she explained. I then read the story. Local pizzeria said to close by year's end. After a long struggle to stay in business after the tragedy that struck many years ago, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza has announced that it will close by the year's end. Despite a year-long search for a buyer, companies seem unwilling to be associated with the company. These characters will live on. In the hearts of children, these characters will live on. CEO. I just stared at the article and looked up at Macy. I'll be damned, I said with a chuckle. I guess that's one prayer answered.
No, Mike, you clearly didn't read everything.
What do you mean?
Look at the date.
I then looked at the date of the article. I see it. It says August 15th, 1997.
I checked all the articles. They were all from that year.
But that doesn't make any sense. I mean, shouldn't it be closed by now?
I don't know, Mike, but I'm worried. Something's definitely not right here.
I then thought about this for a second. If this place was supposed to be closed 17 years ago for sanitation and business problems, why has nobody noticed it's still open?
Mike, we need to call someone.
Who? The cops? And tell them what?
The Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is still open. That's gotta break some sort of code.
They'd never believe us, I replied. It would just be better to fix this ourselves.
How?
I honestly don't know yet, but I'm sure I'll have something in mind for tonight.
Tonight?
I still have a job, you know. A job I can't leave unless I want to be sued.
Forget about being sued. This is more important.
Macy, don't worry, I have an idea. I then explained everything I was thinking. She looked sickened, but then confused.
Are you sure?
She asked. Yes, I replied. I'm sure. She then looked like she was about to cry again. I hugged her tightly. Let's just get some sleep, I told her. We could both use it. She quietly agreed and went to her bedroom, and I went to mine. I had no idea if I was right, but it would be worth it if I was. Night 5. I sat in my office, confused as ever. When I first arrived, the manager stated he made sure the suits were clean. I thanked him, and that's when I asked him. Excuse me, I told him. What's the date? He seemed confused. What's today's date? I forgot. Well, it's September 16th, 1997. I stared at him. I knew he was going to say that. I then nodded my head and thanked him. He then left for the night. I am now fully convinced that this place is haunted somehow. I've heard stories of spirits being trapped in buildings and reliving the same life from their time over and over. This must be one of those cases. Now I'm in my office, waiting for my 5th night of Freddy's to start. Suddenly, my phone rang. It wasn't my work phone, though. It was my cell phone. I pulled it out and saw it was Macy. Hello? I asked.
Mike,
She replied.
I'm just scared.
It'll be fine, I told her.
What if it's not, Mike? Huh?
I wasn't sure how to answer that. Don't worry about me. If there's trouble, I'll call you.
Immediately?
Immediately.
Okay. I love you, Mike.
I couldn't remember the last time I heard her say that. I love you too, Macy. Suddenly the clock rang 12. I gotta go, Macy. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye.
I then hung up and opened the screen. Everyone was in their proper place, which was good. It's just what I needed. Then my work phone rang. I was actually surprised. I thought the phone guy was, you know. Anyway, I picked up the phone. Hello? What happened next will haunt me forever. Some strange, spooky, almost demonic sounds could be heard playing through the phone. It was really deep. It sounded funny, like it was slowed down and backwards or something. It continued playing for a bit before a loud screech blared and hung up. I then placed the phone back and opened the screen. Bonnie was gone. What a surprise. I found him in the back room, the room that had the smelly Freddy suit. I then checked Pirate Cove. Foxy wasn't out of his curtain. Good. At least that's something positive. As the night passed, I began to wonder if I could make it tonight. I mean, right now it was 103, and my power was at 86. So I guess that was good, but Bonnie and Chica were both wandering about. It wasn't too bad, but Foxy was starting to peek out of the curtain a bit. Thankfully, Freddy hasn't moved. I managed to lose sight of Chica at one point. I checked the kitchen and didn't hear any sounds. I quickly turned on the light on the right hallway. Sure enough, that frickin' chicken was against the window. I slammed the door shut and opened the camera. Foxy was almost out of his curtain, and Freddy was staring at me on stage with creepy eyes. However, I couldn't find Bonnie. I turned on the left hallway light and found that damn purple bunny. I closed that door as well. I then realized this was the first time I'd ever shut both doors at the same time. I looked at my power counter and saw it decreasing rapidly. I checked both lights and saw Chica and Bonnie were still there. To make matters worse, I heard Freddy's evil laugh start echoing again. I opened the camera and found him hiding in the bathrooms. Foxy was the least difficult to handle right now. I knew how dangerous this could all end. I put the camera down and checked the hallway lights again. Chica was still there, but fortunately Bonnie moved. I opened the door and checked the camera again. Freddy was still in the bathroom, Bonnie was in the hallway, and Foxy... Oh shit, Foxy was sprinting down the hallway. I slammed the door instantly and heard banging. I waited a few seconds, turned on the light, confirmed he wasn't there, and opened the door. I checked the other light. Chica was gone. I sighed with relief as I opened the door again. I then heard Freddy's laugh. I opened the cameras again and found him hiding in an unimaginably dark hallway near my door. He wasn't close enough to possibly enter, but he was still close. I really needed to keep my eye on him. I looked at my time and my power. It was 2:54 and my power was at 43%. It would take a miracle to survive now. I kept having frequent hallway visits from Bonnie and Chica, as well as Foxy teasing me by coming out of the curtain a bit, but my main focus was keeping my eye on Freddy. He was still in the hallway. I wanted it to stay that way. Finally, at 5:09, I looked at my power. 2%. I couldn't conserve it well enough. I actually started crying. There was no way I was gonna make it. There's no way I'd go a little less than an hour without them finding me. With that, I made the ultimate risk. I shut both of my doors. I then pulled out my cell phone and called Macy. Her phone rang for what seemed like forever. Finally, I heard her voice.
Hi, you've reached Macy Schmidt. I'm sorry I can't answer the phone right now. Leave a message and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks.
I couldn't believe it. It was her frickin' voicemail. I heard the beep, signaling my cue to leave a message. I sighed as tears rolled down my face. I was scared. I really was. Macy, I told the phone. I'm in trouble. It's not even close to 6 a.m. and my power is about to run out. If by some miracle I make it, that's fine, but if I don't make it, just know that I love you. And I want to thank you for everything. Thank you for letting me stay with you, and thank you for not giving up on me. Tell Mom and Dad that I love them too. Tell them I'm sorry for disappointing them, but I didn't go out as a coward. And one more thing. Make sure that, no matter what happens, this place gets it. Do whatever it takes for Freddy Fazbear's Pizza to get hell. And that's when it happened. As soon as I said that, the lights went off and the doors opened. I paused. This was it. This was my last chance to say my last thoughts to her. Goodbye, Macy, I finally said. Again, thank you for caring about me. I love you. And just remember that none of this was your fault. It's none of our faults. I lost it. I dropped my phone and sobbed like a little baby. I knew full well I was gonna die right now. I just knew it. After I managed to control myself a bit, I picked up the phone and hung up. As much as I didn't want her last image of me to be me crying my eyes out, I couldn't think of anything else to say. I sat in total silence. I didn't say a word. I didn't move a muscle. I couldn't see the clock, but I can only imagine I was sitting there for 5 minutes. That's when I heard it. That damn music box. The one that played last night, just as Freddy was approaching my room. It was unimaginably close. I held my breath. This was it. I was gonna die. They would get me and stuff me into a suit, just like Phone Guy. I felt so stupid for thinking I'd survive a week at a place like this. Then the music stopped. There was total silence for a few seconds before I heard footsteps near the left door. I couldn't tell if they were going away or towards me. I sat there for what seemed like forever. Did they leave? Are they gone? Did they think I wasn't there? Was I actually gonna make it? I heard that loud screeching sound I heard on the phone right in my ears as Freddy appeared right in front of my face. I screamed in panic and surprise, but not for long. Freddy then grabbed my arm and yanked me out of the office. I was now being dragged on the floor with the robot's tight grip on my left arm. I could make out some of the posters in the hallway as I flew by fast. All the while I was screaming as loud as I could in both pain and fear. I didn't know if anyone could hear me, but it was worth a shot. However, nobody showed up as I found myself in the back room. I could see an empty Freddy suit sitting there, already in position. It's like they knew they'd get me tonight. I then gathered my strength, reached up towards my attacker and hit him in the head. It seemed to do the trick, as it quickly let go of me and grabbed where I hit him. I proceeded to get up and bolt towards the door. Contract or no contract, I was getting the hell out of here. I bolted out of the back room with all my stamina. I knew the exit was really close. Just a turn and a sprint would do it. I ran through the backstage area and onto the stage, where I saw the exit in plain sight. However, I could see the silhouette of a bunny right in front of me. I knew I couldn't risk going out there without him getting me. I had to either wait it out or find another exit. Seeing as how I have 4 of these guys after me and no light to see them approach, I had to stay in motion and find another way out. I quietly headed towards the opposite direction of Bonnie and quickly found myself in front of what appeared to be Pirate Cove. The main giveaway was Foxy peeking out of the curtain, slowly looking around. I could see him look in the camera, which obviously wasn't working now. I wondered if these guys had night vision, or if they fully relied on sound. I wanted to know for sure, but I needed to figure it out safely. I saw a drinking straw on the floor. The janitor clearly needs to be fired. Of course, he might have the same contract as me. Anyway, I picked up the straw and carefully waved it in front of Foxy's face. He didn't seem bothered by it at all. He just continued to stare at the turned-off camera. I then carefully placed the straw back on the floor and, as slowly and quietly as I could, sneaked around Foxy. I wanted to give off a sigh of relief, but remembered how absolutely quiet I had to be. I then kept walking down the left hallway. Shockingly, this is the first time I've ever actually been down this part of the restaurant. I usually go down the right hallway to get into the office. I found nothing but doors, including the empty and open one for my security office. As much as I'd love to hide in here for protection, I had nothing to protect myself with. Just had to keep moving. I realized, though, that cutting through the office would take me to the other hallway. I decided to do just that and head back towards the exit. Maybe Bonnie will have moved by then. I then went down the right hallway very quietly. As I passed the restrooms, I could hear that deep, evil laugh. I moved along faster, but just as quietly. As I came closer to the dining area, I heard some clanking to my right. I looked and saw it was the entrance to the kitchen. I paused. I knew there was a character in there, but I never did get to see what was inside the kitchen. I slowly crept towards the door and took a peek inside. It was really dark, but I could see a yellow figure just a few feet in front of me. It was walking around, bumping into the tables and stuff. I then quickly started turning around. I quickly but quietly ran away and towards the dining area. I really hoped Chica didn't see me. After making it safely through the dining area, I found myself in the stage area again. It was still fairly dark, but I didn't see any signs of Bonnie or any other animatronic. I was so happy. I was so close to escape. I then quickly tiptoed towards the door. It felt like I was entering the gates to heaven, only without dying. I stopped just as I got to the door. I turned around and took one last look at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. "Goodbye, you hellhole," I whispered quietly. "It was nice knowing—" Bonnie jumped right in front of me and screeched the same screech as Freddy. He then grabbed me by the arm and yanked me towards the back room. I couldn't believe it. I was that close to freedom, and I'd blow it to wish this place goodbye. I felt like such a fucking idiot. I tried hitting Bonnie in the head like I did with Freddy, but this time I was grabbed by my right arm, and my left arm was still in pain from where Freddy grabbed me. It was no use. A miracle would save me now. The final showdown. I saw the spare Freddy suit that seemed specially prepared for me still in the room. Bonnie didn't have as tight as a grip on me as Freddy did, so maybe that could prove to be an advantage. He then reached for my other arm. Now was my chance. I wiggled my trapped arm around furiously to get it loose. However, Bonnie suddenly seemed to get a tighter grip on me. He then yanked my arm towards the suit. I used my free hand to grab my trapped arm and pull back. That's when it happened. Bonnie bent my right arm, not at the elbow, but at the bone itself. I screamed in absolute pain as I heard the sharp snap echo through the room. After that, I lost focus on my other hand and dropped it. Bonnie then rammed my broken arm into the suit's right arm. I realized I'd be dead if I didn't do something. Without thinking, I reached behind and punched Bonnie in the face. I must have hit harder than I thought, because the next thing I know, I heard a loud thump. I turned around and saw what looked like a mask lying on the ground. I then looked up at Bonnie. Instead of his creepy, purple bunny face, it was now a child's head smashed to a metal face. The child was a little boy, maybe around 6 years old. He was bloody and disgusting, and he smelled horrible. But this confirmed my biggest suspicion of what happened to those kids all those years ago. Just then, a quick flash of light came from the human head and Bonnie collapsed. He then stopped moving. I think he was officially gone for good. I tried to get my arm out, but it appeared to be stuck. I could still feel a sharp pain all throughout my arm, but I couldn't tell if it was because it had a shattered bone or if there were so many metal objects inside. Either way, it hurt like a bitch when I pulled on it. I then heard a noise behind me. I turned around and didn't see anyone or anything moving. I was really confused and just hoped it was my imagination, but that hope turned to doubt really fast. Chica appeared and tackled me to the ground, pulling my arm and causing me to cry in pain. The chicken then grabbed my left leg and tried stuffing it into the suit. I used both my legs to try and fight it off, but it was no use. Snap! I could feel my leg shatter as I howled in pain. I barely had enough nerves left to feel my broken leg being stuck into the suit. I then punched Chica hard in the face, and her mask fell off as well. Just as I suspected, inside the robot was a metal endoskeleton and a dismantled head of a child. This time, however, it was a little girl, maybe around 8 years old. I almost vomited at the smell. Then, just like Bonnie, a light flashed from the girl's head and the robot body collapsed, then stopped moving, permanently. Now my right arm and left leg were broken and stuck in this suit. It would take professional help to get me out. I then heard fast-paced sprinting near the room. I stood still in fear. There was only one character I've seen sprint. Foxy barged through the door and ran at me with his hooked arm above his head. I tried punching his face, but he ducked out of the way just in time. He then quickly thrust his hook into my arm. I kept screaming in pain as more of my limbs got destroyed. Foxy then took my hooked and only remaining arm and shoved that into the suit as well. Using what willpower I had left, I used my leg to reach up and kick Foxy right in the jaw. His entire face flew across the room and crashed into a few spare masks. Again, there was a child's face inside the robot's head. A little boy whose face was so mangled I couldn't tell how old he was. A light appeared inside the robotic skull and the pirate fell. I was glad about that one. I never liked Foxy. That just left only one possessed character remaining. Right on cue, that deep, crazy laugh echoed. It sounded unimaginably close. I didn't care though. This time, I was ready for Freddy. He then lunged towards me in a leap. I kicked him right in the center of the face, in his big black nose. I heard a horn honking as I did it. He then flew backwards and crashed into the other suits. He stood still for what seemed like forever. I slowly limped my way over to him. It hurt so much, but I didn't care. I had to do this. I looked over Freddy. His face was practically collapsed on itself, thanks to me. I then kicked the mask off. There was a little girl's face inside. My best guess on age was 10. I still couldn't believe it. All this time, the robots were possessed by the missing children and nobody knew. Then, a light flashed from the girl's head, only this time it was super bright and it lasted for about 5 seconds. I don't know whether it was because of the light or the pain, but the next thing I knew, I was collapsing myself and passed out. Rescue. I heard the clock chiming. I wasn't sure whether it was a dream or not. I slowly opened my eyes and looked around. At first, I'd forgotten what happened. Then I felt sharp pains all over my limbs and I remembered. I tried sitting up with all my strength. It took time, but I managed to get up and look around the room. It somehow looked worse than it did before. There was dust and cobwebs all over the walls and corners, and the spare animal suits were ripped to shreds. I then dared to look down at the floor. When I did, I saw the 4 animatronic characters I had destroyed lying down, exactly how they were when I passed out. Only this time, I noticed something different. The children were gone. All I could see inside the heads were the animatronic skeletons. I then smiled. I had done it. I freed the children trapped in there for almost 20 years. And now that they were gone, there would be no more problems with this place. I then looked down next to Freddy and saw a yellow piece of rectangular paper as well as a pink square that I hadn't seen earlier. I limped over to it and took a look. I scoffed when I saw what it was. "Good job, sport," was all the pink post-it note read. Next to it was a yellow check for $120 in my name. It was my week's pay. I then started laughing uncontrollably. I really could not care less about the money at this point. I stopped laughing when my arms and legs started hurting. I noticed I was still half out of the Freddy suit. I was definitely stuck in this thing good. Suddenly I heard the front doors open. I stopped. It wasn't the manager, was it?
Mike!
I sighed with relief. It wasn't the manager. It was... Macy!
Where are you? Are you okay?
I'm in the back room, and I think I definitely need to go to the hospital. I heard footsteps rapidly approaching the door before I saw my sister rush into the room. When she did, she stopped dead in her tracks and looked around at everything. At the filthiness. At the broken robots. At her brother inside a costume.
What happened?
She finally asked quietly. I'll tell you later, I'd said, wincing in pain. Get me to the hospital. My arms and leg are broken.
Oh shit. Okay, hang on.
She then rushed over to me and carefully picked me up. I winced in pain, but I had to suck it up. It's a good thing she was stronger than she looked. Picking up my weight, as well as the weight of the suit, couldn't have been easy. It took maneuvering, but she managed to get a tight grip on me and carried me out of the back room.
I couldn't believe you worked at a dump like this,
she said. It's not that bad, I argued.
Mike, it's like the place hasn't been used in decades.
What? We then got on the stage, and I got a good view of the whole area. I gasped when I did. Macy was right. It looked like the place was abandoned for years. Everything was covered in dust, the tables were flipped, and the windows were boarded up. I kinda wanted to see the rest of the building, but I also wanted to get as far from here as possible.
Let's just go,
she told me. Let's, I told her. We then went to the door and left the restaurant. I managed to get one last good look at it. I smiled when I did. This place has caused enough pain for a lifetime. I was glad to be rid of it. Epilogue.
Need anything, Mike?
Macy asked as she popped her head into my bedroom. Actually, I replied from my bed, I could use some food.
Good. I'll make you some pizza.
I then got a scared look on my face. Could I have some ramen noodles instead?
Sure.
She then left to prepare my meal. After all that's happened, the last thing I want to have on my mind is pizza. It'd been about a month since my 5th and final night at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. The doctors had to cut the Freddy suit off of me, and then spent hours fixing my arms and leg. The medication they prescribed helped, but it didn't get rid of the pain altogether. The doctor said it would take time, but my limbs would eventually heal. He also said I wouldn't be able to work during the healing process. He looked so confused when I started laughing like a maniac. Anyway, I am now confined to my bed with my arms and left leg in a cast and suspended in the air. It wasn't the comfiest setup, but I didn't complain. I don't think I'll ever complain again. Macy checks on me constantly, seeing if I need food or anything. I'm really glad I called her when the power went out. That message I left was the reason she came that morning. She told me the other day that Freddy Fazbear's was set to be torn down soon. It was the happiest news I ever received. Macy finally brought and fed me my noodles. We talked a bit about this and that. Mom and Dad are concerned, of course, but they seemed to calm down when I said it was a work injury. I don't think they'll mind me not working for a long time. Finally, it was time for bed. Macy and I said our goodnights and she went to bed. I then slowly closed my eyes. Despite everything, I've actually slept pretty well. No nightmares or anything. I slowly felt myself drifting to sleep. I'm not sure how long I was out, but I thought I heard a thump in my room a while later. I couldn't turn the light on, but I thought I saw something in the darkness. It looked like a person slouched over and lifeless. Suddenly, it glowed a bright yellow, and I realized what it was. That golden Freddy I had seen on my 4th night. I tried screaming, but it was like it was preventing me from making a noise. Just then, it morphed into what appeared to be a child. That's when I remembered. There were 5 missing children. I only found 4. Before I could think any more about it, a loud, almost demonic sound blasted in my ears. I still couldn't scream as the image of the golden Freddy stayed frozen in my brain. Even when I closed my eyes, I could still see it staring menacingly at me with its empty eye sockets. Finally, after a few seconds, the image and the sound disappeared. I then finally heard myself screaming. A few seconds later, Macy charged into the room.
Are you okay?
She asked with worry. I looked around my room. No golden Freddy, no sign of anyone but her. Yeah, I finally told her. It was just a nightmare.
Do you need anything?
Some water would be nice. She then left to get the water. My heart was still racing. I realized right then and there that Golden Freddy was still haunted. If he even existed. I'd never seen signs of him at the pizzeria. All I knew is that I may have left Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, but Freddy Fazbear's Pizza certainly hasn't left me.